Asteroid of fear.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Men of the House podcast. And on today's episode, we have Brian Gryn, and we're going to talk about fitness over 40. I'm particularly interested because I'm 48, and I know many of my listeners out there are between 28 and 44. And hopefully you will all get to the 40s, and we're going to talk about fitness in the 40s or after, and the challenges. And I can speak for myself, as I was telling Brian kind of before we started recording, was this is my second time to lose 30 plus pounds at 20 years apart. So, 28 and 48. And it's been different and
Hmm.
challenging. So, how are you doing today?
Yeah, doing great. Yeah, thanks for having me on, Richard.
Yeah, I'm excited for this. So, give us a little bit about your background, kind of, I imagine you were training people, but kind of at what point did you start wanting to focus on like over 40 or a little bit older?
Yeah, I started training probably almost 20 years ago and worked with a lot of just general population individuals and just with strength training. Started out in a
Mhm.
small studio, me and a couple of trainers, and did that for like 10 years and just decided to sort of uh, change my sort of audience, a sense that I was working with a lot of like younger kids in the
Mhm.
beginning, and then realized as I got older that perhaps there was a niche with like the 40 plus,
Yeah.
and I was getting there as well. So these were individuals that I could relate with. And yeah, just started getting into more than just the strength training side, more like, nutrition, sleep, stress, things like that. And because, they all sort of go together.
Right.
And yeah, I just started working with individuals pretty much 35, 40 plus, and it's just been a good market for me, and so individuals that I could obviously relate with. So
Well, it's kind of one of those things of, I can remember I started off in undergraduate school working at a fitness studio as a front desk person. And then I graduated with a BA in health and kinesiology, got my personal training certification, and became a trainer. And part of it was a result of me losing 30 something pounds, I think about 38 pounds, and kind of having that know-how. But I can remember they always say that, it typically when it comes to results, it's not what you're doing in the gym, it's what you're doing outside of the gym. And so like kind of when you mentioned stress, sleep, diet, everybody knows, of course, about diet, but I think as we've evolved, and one of the things I've noticed over the past 20 years in losing that weight is we take into account so many other factors. And now we have like devices like I'm wearing a Whoop
mhm.
that will measure strain, recovery, and sleep. And you have to they have the Aura rings, and you have to wonder about the degrees of accuracy as it relates to that. But I think if anything else, it can give you like a baseline of like, I can look at my strain and go, okay, if I'm trying to reach this target, I know I need to do a little bit more. And it made me think about like, hey, even though I went to the gym today, or maybe I only got into a walk, maybe I can do some burpees or something and get my heart rate up and increase that strain a little bit. And I thought that was kind of interesting because um, in the outline I have in some of the questions we'll talk about are some of the micro workouts and whatnot. But give us the importance of muscle as we age. Why is it important that we should be doing strength training? Because I think there's always the concerns when you talk about people getting in the weight room, they talk about they don't want to get too big. And we typically know anybody who has studied it long enough that that's not always the case.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think you hear that a lot of times from women as well. I know with like my wife, she was more of a runner, and we've been
Hmm.
together like 4 years, and I got her in the strength training, and yeah, she looks great. Like it's like there's nothing to fear from strength training. I think that, even if you're just starting out, maybe find someone to sort of get you going, give you some guidance. But I mean, we all know that, you have this sort of involuntary loss of muscle as you age,
Right.
and also known as sarcopenia. typically it's like about 3 to 8% per decade after the age of 30.
Oh,
And it's even higher after the age of 60. So it's, this could be a big contributor to individuals as they age for, broken hips, just like loss of bone mass and, things like osteoporosis. So, I mean, there's so many reasons you could probably do a whole podcast about it, but I think it's important to strength train one just for functional daily life, getting up and
hmm,
down, I mean, for example, doing like just let's say a deadlift where you're trying to get into like hip extension and strengthen your glutes. I mean, these are things that are going to apply to your daily life, walking upstairs, getting
right.
up out of bed. So I think it should just be a top priority for individuals. I mean, we're all aging, right? So especially 40 plus, that this should be the sort of the hallmark of your routine throughout the week and the month. And so, obviously the advantages of building muscle and changing body composition is great as well. Trying to get visceral fat down, that belly fat, which could be difficult for some people, but muscle is metabolically active, and when you're
Right.
at rest, it's going to burn more than fat will. So these are all just some of the reasons why building strength and muscle is so important as you age.
Yeah, I think kind of some of the points you made were great that, especially as you age, kind of this daily life thing. I look at that a lot and going, so my father's 70, he just had knee surgery, but he's had shoulder surgeries. And he gets care through the VA for people to help him with tasks, but um, if he was able to do more, it just
Hmm.
happens to be that way. But there's things. I mean, it's not just walking, but what if you have to lift 40 pounds? Or I do Uber Eats and I often deliver 50-pound bags of dog food, Are
Yeah.
you able to do that? And then I also, something I consider and think about a lot is I think about geographically where people are situated and where people retire. And thinking about how, if you purchase a house that has stairs, all your kids move out, and then you and your husband or wife never sell the house. Now all
Hmm.
of a sudden you're 60, 70 years old and you have to navigate stairs all the time.
Sure.
And you need to be able to do that. And
And how
I
about,
come
and I was just going to say, and how about just you talked about your dad and surgeries?
Mhm.
Like my dad is getting his knee done, he's 75, but he's been into fitness for probably for him a little bit later in life, but 20, 30 years of fitness.
Wow.
Yeah. And so his recovery, I think, will be that much better and that much easier because he sort of has that fitness background.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, with my father, that was kind of, he has Parkinson's, so he has some comorbidities that go along with it
Okay.
that's made recovery very difficult.
Mhm.
But, in looking at it, it's kind of that compound effect of, he's 70, and let's say, he wasn't always unfit, and he's done some I guess he's been fit in the past, but somewhere along the way, these things compound and they add up. And whether it's an illness or something you get and managing that and your fitness kind of along with it to paint an overall kind of health picture, um, it declines and these things become more challenging to deal with. And like you said, I think, if there were a different level of fitness, his recovery could be different, but of course, comorbidities and stuff do play a factor in that. But starting off with like some basics, what do you when people are one question I have, fasted or non-fasted for
Mhm.
working out?
Yeah, you know what? My answer has probably changed over the years with this. I think whatever works best for your schedule. Because I know people that get up and they have to get their workout done first thing before
Right.
like everyone else is up. And so that's the case. Go ahead, fasted. I think that's completely fine. I think you're talking about a small percent of people who maybe are trying to really maximize their workouts in a
Hmm.
sense, and they're trying to really maybe they're competing or something. I think that having creating an anabolic environment to build muscle. So maybe having something before you work out or during will help build muscle slightly. more than being in a fasted state because
Right.
fasting is a little bit more catabolic. But in general, whatever works for you, just go with it. I've done both, and honestly, I don't see a big difference either way. And I think it just matters of that individual's schedule and like where their workouts can fit best to make sure that they're consistent. So
Yeah, I'm a flip-flopper. It's kind of however I feel and depending on the day, what's
right.
going on. Sometimes I'm fasted, sometimes I'm not. But I can definitely tell, even if I just have a couple hundred calories before lifting weights, that I can push a lot harder.
Mhm.
And with that push, I guess you get extra strain, and extra strain hopefully leads to extra muscle
Sure.
down the road if you feel right.
Yeah.
Um, but what are what are kind of some of the things that you look at if I'm 48 and I come to you? Um, what are some of the things outside of, let's say, what kind of routine would you suggest? I mean, combination of strength training and cardio, or do you look at somebody if I say, hey, I want to be a runner and train me straight towards running, or do you still recommend strength training for people who prefer running, like let's say, or bike
Yeah.
riders?
Yeah. Yeah, I would still recommend strength training up above most, unless you're like training for a certain type of event, a
Hmm.
marathon or something. Still, I would recommend strength training. I think you will improve your runs by having more strength, especially lower body strength. But one thing that I think is underlooked a little bit is the things like you said that you're doing outside of the weight room. Because there's something called NEAT, which is non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is sort of the things that you're doing outside of your exercise that you do throughout the day. And one of the big things that I like is just walking. I
Hmm.
think that try to get my clients walking at least once a day. And obviously I have dogs, so it helps. That's easy to do. But I don't know about your weight loss journey, Richard, but was walking something that you implemented, or did
It
you?
was right
Yeah,
off the bat. That was kind of the first thing I started because I knew it was a starting point. I felt like it was sustainable and
right.
something I could do to where even if you're looking at the time block, in making time, the amount of output or stress was less than, let's say, going to the weight room or going for a jog, because then you're trying to fit in the time thing on top of something that seems stressful to you because you're beginning it. And I think a walk is a great place to start because it's sustainable. It's not overly stressful, and you're still going to get some benefit and build momentum as you're trying to um, implement consistency for the time it takes to get it done.
Yeah, yeah, totally agree. And like you said, it is, sort of, low stress, low impact,
Hmm.
and really gets you outside, right? See the
Yeah.
sun. So it does a lot of other things, helps with circadian rhythm and just getting, some vitamin D. So sort of, I like these tasks or these, I would say like principles that sort of kill a bunch of birds with one stone, like
Hmm.
that can sort of knock out a bunch of things. And that's why I like the micro workouts. I know you mentioned that briefly, but like, I talked to Brad Kearns. He's out of the West Coast. He has a cool podcast called B Rad Podcast, and we always talk about micro workouts. And, I think 20, 30-minute workout, maybe even 15-minute workout for people, it makes it a lot more attainable, and it sort of takes the excuses out.
What do you
And so,
consider a micro workout? Like, what are examples?
yeah. So, I mean, you could do body weight stuff. This could be, you could use a system. There's something called the X3 bar, which I've had Dr. Jakewish on my podcast, and he has this sort of like band system with like a little Olympic bar and a ground plate, and you could just hammer out like do like one set per body part to start out, and you can get most of the body, or at least pushing or pulling part, done in 20 minutes. And I think it's a great place for people to start, even for some advanced individuals. I think it can, there's some science behind just doing one set to failure. Some people believe in it, some people don't, but let me tell you, if you really you do it intentionally,
Right.
Like you have to be really intentional when you do something like that. But one set to failure, and you do it for, let's just say you're pushing, uh, you know, uh, pushing the chest. That would be anything like overhead press, things like that. Um, you can get your workout done pretty quick.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of if anybody's been in the military and you've been to boot camp, that intentionality. I can remember one time them having us hold a pencil straight out in front of us and it works your
Mm.
lats just like a lat raise.
Right.
And till failure,
Mm.
and a pencil will appear to be heavy, but I think part of like that micro workout thing, it definitely reminds me of boot camp or anybody who's, let's say, watching jail or prison documentaries where these people who have this time, there's this like, in boot camp, you're being smoked, is what they call it, push-ups, burpees, this and that, the other, take off for a lap. Then you do normal stuff. Then you get in trouble. And it's 3 sets of this, 4 sets of this, or hey, you're going to do push-ups till I get tired. But you're doing these things throughout the day. And I feel
Sure.
like, it is kind of this start, stop, raise your metabolism, lower it. And I've kind of lately, because, I lost a little bit of weight, kind of hit a plateau. And now as I attempt to break through the plateau, not only am I looking at calories, but I'm tweaking that with the whoop, like I said, with the strain. It's like, okay, yesterday I had a podcast meeting at a certain time and I was able to get a workout in, but I was only able to get like, let's say 10 minutes, 15 minutes of cardio. So then later in the day, I took a 45-minute walk through the country.
Mhm.
Um, and by looking at that strain, because I have kind of a target set that I'm trying to achieve, but I'm kind of going back to that style of, I think people make it overly complicated in that, you know, realistically, during a commercial break, you could do a set of 25 push-ups, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you could do a walking lunge through the house, right? Yeah, you could do a seated, uh, seated wall squat.
Oh, yeah, forget about that one.
Yeah, that, all you need is a wall, right? Like, so you can get creative about it if you're really crunched on time. I personally like enjoy getting to the gym a little bit and just getting out because I work from the house.
I
And
do
I
as
think a
well.
lot, yeah, I think a lot of people have since like COVID. But if you're really like short on time, I mean, these micro workouts, they add up over time, and it can go a long way.
Is that kind of the idea of small changes, big results? Whether it's micro workouts or what other kinds of things are you talking about in there?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that could be one thing. That's more like identifying sort of those low-hanging fruits, those sort of, those major culprits that make the biggest impact. So that could be, obviously, for someone that could be big. For someone else, maybe they have an issue where they find themselves snacking late at night.
Hmm.
So it's like, okay, let's just focus on that, and perhaps cut that your eating window to 8 o'clock. Anything after 8, nothing after 8, sort of thing. And so that's what I mean by the small changes, big results. But it could mean a handful of things.
What are what are some of the things, some keys to like good morning and evening routines? What are some of the things that you kind of implement to try to set your day up?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I would say first thing I do is go for a morning walk. Pretty much no matter the weather. I live in Chicago. I mean, we have,
Okay.
although the last few winters haven't been so bad, but yeah. So I get up with my dogs. A lot of times they don't even, they like, I have to force them sometimes, but they eventually like to go. So, morning walks. I mean, I think that's like a staple to my morning. And then after that, time willing, 10-minute meditation. 10-minute meditation. And it's taken me a little while to find sort of a guided meditation that I like, but I found one just on YouTube, and I just pretty much almost listen to the same one every morning. It's just a very good one. It's just 10 minutes. And after that, pretty much get the morning going. Those are the two main things that get my morning up. And then as far as evening routine, um, try to sort of eliminate the blue light screens.
Mm-hmm.
Yo, word up. This is Ethan from the Nonchalant Perfectionist podcast. I'm so glad you tuned in here, man. Hold on, just real quick. Did you know that this podcast, as well as my own, are part of a much larger world called the Podcast Connection Network? Yeah. Yeah, we have some pretty amazing shows hosted by even more amazing souls. And look, we're just waiting to be discovered. You curious? Yeah, I know you are. Head over to the link in the description below. Trust me, you won't be disappointed.
At least an hour before bed. I do have like blue light blocking glasses that I'll wear to sort of just. I took a little while to get used to them. I don't know if you ever tried them, but they're great, and I find that I get to sleep quicker when I have them on towards the evening. So big fan of that. Yeah, and yeah, I'll just try to read a book, wind down a little bit, maybe play some guitar, and those are sort of my morning and evening routines.
So, you've gone through these stages with this much fitness experience, kind of changing your demographic, shifting what's important to you, call it evolution, if you will. And what are some of the things as because I think as a fitness person, sometimes you're your own personal guinea pig, and the things that are important to you as you realize. So you kind of help your clients implement them. But what are some of the stumbling blocks that you've had to kind of overcome as you've dialed in your routine to kind of get where you are to understand these are the things I think are important? Like, let's say, if you have any pillars, like these are the things I deem important. These are what I want to push to my clients. What are some things you've had to overcome, be it in mindset and or routine, to get to that place?
Well, I think for a lot of people, especially male clients, is sort of dialing in like the reasons why they want to improve their health, like really
Mm-hmm.
getting clear, creating some clarity around that, I think is really important first and foremost. And once they dial that in, getting an understanding and a baseline assessment of where they're at, like you were talking about the aura or the whoop that you
Mm-hmm.
use, and people use an aura ring or whatever. I think these are great, especially initially, just sort of seeing where you're at. Like you're talking about calories, I like to get an idea, like what are we consuming? So maybe
Mm-hmm.
journaling for a couple of weeks.
My Fitness Pal, great
Yeah,
free app.
MyFitnessPal. Yeah, there's a ton of free apps where you can input this. And I think that's a great place to start for people because I don't think we realize until we actually write things down.
Yeah.
Like I know that when, that runs true for me. I mean, a lot of times you don't know what you're consuming until
Well,
you're
when you
actually.
see what 1 ounces of cashews looks like we were weighing out 1 ounce for my wife the other night on a food scale, and we have these little tiny Tupperware containers, and it says, the thing says maybe around 16. Turned out it was 14, but it
Mm,
fits in there. And I
mm,
think when you're able to see, hey, this 170 calories, or you can have this for 170 calories, you could have you could have a 4 ounce chicken breast.
mhm.
Which would you prefer? Because 14 cashews will literally fit in the palm of your hands unless you're a toddler. It's
Yeah,
not very much.
yeah, yeah. Nuts are very dense. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, very dense, and the problem with nuts is you can easily overconsume them, right? We've
Mm-hmm.
all run into this. But yeah, so I would say back to your main question is, yeah, just creating a baseline, creating some clarity. I think those are important right off the bat. Yeah, and then just sort of seeing where you're at, like as far as activity. I think like sleep is obviously underrated. I mean, it's being talked about more, but
Right.
at least for myself, I find that if I get a bad night's sleep or, it's not optimal, that I find that, other things suffer. And I think a lot of people can struggle with their weight mainly because they're not sleeping well.
Yeah. It's kind of weird in that I know if I don't sleep enough that you might need to feel different or feel more. Or
Hmm.
if I'm feeling mentally depressed a little bit, let's say, um, I should probably add the right fuel, things that can boost that. But sometimes your body tricks you into feeling, I almost go the opposite way. I almost don't eat, which is less healthy and
Mhm.
is not going to improve your sleep. Being more hungry or less fueled, it might make you more tired, but it is certainly not helping you. Just like when you think of whether you're repairing muscles or you're sick, and you talk about nourishment for your body, your body needs these things. And oftentimes I find that whether it's lack of sleep, low mental health state, any of those things can really kick us off some of the basics that as opposed to leaning back into the basics, sometimes we tend to withdraw, or spiral a little bit. And it's kind of that all or nothing. You have
Mhm.
one bad day and people spiral back into the hole. But
Yeah. I mean, I think someone that's just starting out, I think
yeah.
it's really important to sort of stay on your game, or have a coach. For maybe someone like yourself, or even for myself,
Hmm.
I've just been doing these principles for so long that even if I have a day, or just a maybe even a cheat meal or whatever it is, like, it doesn't really bother me, because I go right back to the norm, which
Yeah.
is, clean eating and things like that. So I think it depends on where they're at in their health journey, and if they fall off a little bit, are they able to just jump right back on, and because it's not about really being perfect.
Right. Have you seen over your years, and as you've changed like the ages and types of clients that you coach and your passion, have you seen, I mean, of course, because you've changed that, you've seen it, but in general, have you seen the reasons for people wanting to be fit change?
Mm.
Like aesthetics versus I want to live longer, versus I mean, some
It's
people are bodybuilders or
Yeah, no, it's changed maybe a little bit in the sense that since my clientele are a little bit older now,
Mhm.
um, I think that, yeah, it's more or less like they're realizing that they need to prioritize their health, and get their shit together,
Right.
because they're getting older. And I think what happens with a lot of individuals is, when they're 20s and 30s, you can get away with stuff, right? But then as they've gotten older, maybe they have a family, that they sort of put their health on the back burner for a while there. And then 20 years later, they realize, oop, I better prioritize these things, or else, I'm not going to be around for this, and this. So I just think maybe their priorities have changed, since when in their 20s and 30s, where, really you can get away with things, and you don't have a family and other responsibilities, so it's not
Right.
as big of a deal. Yeah. So um yeah, definitely the reasons change as you get older, for sure.
Do you think that looking better naked is always a reason? Like the people in the 20s, the 30s, and the 40s, do you still have 40-year-olds that are like, I want to, or 50-year-olds even, like, hey, I want to be at the beach and be able to take my shirt off and be confident?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think it's just a confidence thing. Whether it's being with a loved one, just feeling confident in their bodies and themselves, or just being around other individuals. Yeah, for sure. I mean, not even with the shirt off. I think just how their clothes fit and how they
Hmm.
feel about that. And so, yeah, that in itself can be a sort of a guiding reason for people to talk with me.
Yeah. And do you see that, do older people, let's say, make a connection more so than younger people in the looking good as the byproduct of consistency and the daily action? And the kind of, let's say, focus on enjoyment and daily action and getting in movement regardless of what kind of movement it is, which kind of plays into the micro workouts and flexibility of like, hey, and that they realize that the good looks are going to come from deploying some of these techniques and the consistency within them. um, is there a better connection between that due to wisdom, age, or anything like that?
I think for sure. I mean, I think we all sort of wise up as we get. Oh, hopefully, most of us will wise up as we get older.
Right.
So, yeah, I think also just just admitting. I think when you've done things or tried things in the past, and maybe they haven't worked as well. I think sometimes people come to a coach because they realize that doing it by themselves just hasn't really worked as well. I think when doing anything, I mean, I think it's very rare for people to just do it by themselves the whole time without a community, even of other individuals. I think this is why like people that got into CrossFit,
Hmm.
become almost fanatical, or like it's like cultish in a good way, right? Like it's obviously instilling good habits and making sure that you're doing it with some into other individuals, like-minded individuals. I think that's really important. And I think as you get older, you realize a lot of it's just about surrounding yourself with people who you want to sort of be like, or that you have similar sort of similarities with those individuals, so it'll lead you to action.
Right.
Yeah.
What is something that fills your cup in as part of your job?
Oh, I mean, I should say I've always, probably for the last 20 years, I've really enjoyed learning about health and wellness just in general. Because not always, probably ever since after college, I'd say I've been interested in sort of optimizing my health, but then realizing that um, I'll help others with that. I think that sort of fulfills me in a way that nothing else really does. So yeah, I think that's probably the biggest, sort of reasons why I like doing what I'm doing, even just putting out content and things. And, if it impacts one person and makes them change, and I don't even know about that person, that's great, because I'm sure that happens. But yeah, I mean, I think just helping people instill these habits that can increase their quality of life, I think is something that really, fills
Have
my
you
cup.
had one story over the 20-year career that has really stuck with you that you can always kind of go back to, that that always can wipe out any of the why am I doing this, that 100% this is the right choice, and you're like, man, I can't believe this happened and I'm so glad I was a part of it. And
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there's a lot of good stories. I think that if I could, think of one, it would be um, I helped an individual who's probably in his late 50s, early 60s, and I think that he wanted change, but I think mindset wise, he always thought of himself as like not able to do it, or maybe he always would make jokes that he was like sort of the fat kid.
mhm,
And if you're calling yourself fat for 30 years, I mean,
right.
that can take a toll on you as well. And I think he was doing it just as being a funny guy, but however, the intent of it was instilled in him. And so that was like more of a mental exercise, and just a individual who just had to sort of change the way he thought about himself. And I think just changing that perspective and creating some belief around the fact that he can be healthy and a little bit leaner really went a long way. And that took some time, but I think, that was where mindset really was like the number one factor there.
I don't remember the curriculum from 20 years ago, but do they teach mindset in some of these personal training certifications?
Yeah, they do. I mean, I've gone through, a decent amount of them, and some more than others. But yeah, mindset is something that comes up depending on the one that you do. But yeah, maybe I would say at least 80% of them touch on it, some
Right.
more depth than others.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because it has been 20 years and so much has changed over 20 years. And when
right.
you look at the evolution of just prioritizing mental health, sleep,
Sure.
stress, there's still that grind culture out there, but there's also this culture of leaning more towards a balance. You've
Mhm.
always had kind of polar opposites, grind and lazy, and then of course, like any truth, it's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I would
it
agree.
seems like we're trying to get to that area and we're prioritizing so much. And that's kind of why I wasn't sure if, some of these certifications, if we're starting to see more trainers come into whether it be studios or big box type training facilities with a more holistic, well-rounded approach. And of course, it's going to depend on what type of client you're training, what their goals are, specificity wise. But, I'm just kind of more curious if some of the trainers entering the fitness industry are coming in with more kind of holistic views, training, education, and whatnot.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that coming in with more of, like you said, a holistic approach where, it's not just about one thing, it's about sort of all the pieces that go together, that'll make the biggest impact. Because like we said, if you're not sleeping right, you're not getting enough rest and recovery. I mean, that's gonna hamper the workout, and it's gonna hamper also that muscle growth as well. So I think they obviously, like we said, they all go hand in hand. And I think coming in with that approach is really important, because if all you're doing is focusing on workouts and you're just going hardcore, like that's going to create a lot of stress, and you're going to probably end up running in circles and sort of getting burnt out. So I think you need to have that balance, especially as you get older. I think recovery is so crucial.
Yeah. As you get older, I would probably say nutrition and recovery,
Mhm. Yeah,
which
I would
nutrition
agree.
is probably part of recovery. The
Right.
calories seem to come on much quicker, and recovery seems to be much more difficult. But before we hop off, you can ask me anything you want if you have any questions. If not, that's fine. And
Yeah, no, I mean, this has been great. And I'm just curious, you said you've gone through 2 bouts of losing weight.
mhm.
And I think we talked a little bit off air, but what's the difference? One was it when you were younger, and now as you get a little bit older, what's the biggest
Yeah,
difference?
28 versus 48, 20 years apart, 30 pounds, 30 plus pounds. Um, well, for one, when I lost the first, it was because I got a job at a gym, and
Mm,
I had uh workout accountability coaches, people to work out with, and that definitely accelerated it. But being around people who would call you out on, um, hey, you're eating that. Do you know, kind of like the cashew example, do you know that cashews have this many calories and you could have this instead for the same amount?
mm,
And you're going to get more protein. And so I think I'd got a good part of knowledge then, but definitely you can push so much harder when you go with a trainer.
mm,
They're there to get you. And if you're not into designing the workout, you can kind of go hands free,
mm.
mind free, and just show up. And, I do business coaching, and the same way somebody would do fitness coaching. I think coaches are crucial, and you should get one definitely in the beginning. But yeah, it kind of gives you that accountability, but the you can just go so much harder. I think when you're younger, the recovery is better. I think. But and the other thing that I've noticed, we've evolved, and like I didn't have a Whoop band 20 years ago. I didn't have a Apple Watch 20 years ago. So it was much more difficult to, whether it be get your body scanned, track your calories. I think we did have MyFitnessPal, but I started off writing, proteins, carbs, fat, and all that. And so, yeah, we've evolved. And so some things of the process are easier,
Mhm.
but I think the physical part in dealing with age, and, when you spend 18 years, I had some fitness in there. Don't get me wrong. There were some times I was like low and would teeter totter, and, you know, but for me, I drank a lot during some points of that 20 years, and I would get that and then quit drinking and lose some weight and get into exercise and kind of back and
Mhm.
forth. And so I think, um, doing the unnecessary damage, if you can avoid it, um, do so, because
Mhm.
it does get more difficult and you hit those plateaus. And, I haven't weighed this weight since that same 18 years ago. So I'm happy about that. And I'm still trying to get back down to what I did then. But, hitting that plateau, we're talking, let's say 18 months versus maybe 9 to 11 months, progression wise. I think you
Yeah.
can just, when you're younger, you can go harder. But also, I did work at a gym and did have trainers around me all the time. And I think therefore too, with that gym, you're in that environment more. And so I think whether I knew about it then or even considered it kind of like micro workouts, you might be running through cleaning all the equipment and push a set, or you're grabbing weights and re-racking all the weights from all the clients who are out
Right.
there. And so, yeah, it was just my output a lot more. And, but it's been fun. I look back and I go back and I go, what was good? What was better? But, I think regardless, the knowledge is out there. And I think it's not just a matter of getting the workout and doing the workout. You need to learn about logging your food. You need to learn about recovery and sleep and put those things into play and start walking like I did. That was kind of the first thing was, hey, and trust the process. I didn't know before, but it was kind of like, I didn't see any progress for a long, 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 long time. And then I just woke up one day and it was different. It was like I was down 10, 12 pounds. I just looked different. So I say trust the process, consistency, go daily. Those walks add up. Don't discount the walk. Even if you use the walk as a decompression after work or to wind up your day, listen to a podcast. As I had quit drinking and was doing mental gymnastics around my reasons why and convincing myself, no, it's not good for you, this and that. Podcast walking was that way to think things out and kind of get you going, boost your dopamine a little bit, raise your endorphins, and kind of give you that natural boost that I needed. And so I would say it's been more beneficial, and I know how much more important it is. And the difference was at 28, I just didn't want to be fat and wanted to look good. At 48, I'm like, I have a 10-year-old daughter and I'm tired of feeling like crap, and, looking like crap, of course, is part of it, but feeling is a lot worse. If you feel bloated, your knees, now my knees and joints ache a little bit, but it's because I worked out. It's because I put some exertion and I feel good. And I feel good about that. I feel like I did something, if you will. And that's rewarding. And that's part of my reasons, asking reasons, how the things change, because mine were 20 years apart, and I was in my 20s versus my 40s, and my reasons have definitely changed.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah. Well, awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you taking your time to spend with me and my guests and audience. And
my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
And I will put everything in the show notes, but go ahead and plug anything you want to plug. Podcast, training studio, anything you have.
Yeah. Podcast is the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. Yeah. And then my website's just briangryn.com, where you can find most of my content. And along with my book is there as well. So
awesome. Sounds good. I'll include that in the show notes. And like I said, thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, you as well. Thank you.
All right, man. Well, that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from. Remember, go out and be the person that you want to meet.
Hey, go.
Asteroid of fear.